Everyone on Game of Thrones says the crypts are safe. So everybody there, how do you know? When the show assured, with that in mind, the crypts probably won't be nearly as safe as everyone thinks they are. In fact, let's take a look at Sunday night's episode. First there's Seared, so, let's talk about these crypts, shall we? We've long known they were going to be pretty important this season. One of HBO, then, gasp, they reach the end of the hallway only to find statues of themselves. A cold wind blew. Obviously, part of the trailer's purpose was to remind us that for thousands of years the Starks have ruled Winterfell, which will be the site of the first huge battle of Season 8. But it's also a good, and now, a bunch of living people are hiding out where a bunch of dead people reside. And a dude. And that dude can raise the dead. There's a theory out there that everyone in the crypts will die because the Night King will reanimate the corpses, and it's a compelling one. That would mean Wes, and it is somewhat foreshadowed by the books. In A Game of Thrones, last night he had dreamt the Winterfell dream again. He was wandering we don't want to dive too deeply into book lore here, but it seems like two major points transferred over to the show. The crypts are actually larger than the castle and are filled with about 8,000 years worth of dead Starks. With that in mind, this theory has some holes. While the crypts are full of bodies, it seems that most of them would be decomposed beyond the point of reanimation, at least beyond the point of useful reanimation. Second, it also seems like it would be an insanely lazy plot point for a show that earned accolades for being deeply nuanced. Someone would have thought. There's another theory floating around that the dead will rise, but some form of old magic will have them fighting alongside the living rather than against them, which would also feel like pretty cheap Deus Ex Machina-ish storytelling. The most likely theory has nothing to do with the bodies stored in the crypts, but instead focuses on architecture. The crypt isn't or maybe everyone in the crypts really will be safe and sound, and this story will have a happy ending, just like everybody says. See 2019, The Washington Post. Get the latest, live updates and on ndtv.com/elections. Like us on or follow. Advertisement. Advertisement. Advertisement.
Raindrop, truck top, smoking, no cooking the hot pot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park pot.